In a small town in Ohio, life moved at a slow and predictable pace. The streets were lined with old oak trees, their branches swaying gently in the breeze. People knew each other by name, and the biggest excitement came from the annual county fair. Emma Carter and her husband, Daniel Miller, were no different from their neighbors. They lived in a modest house on the edge of town, where mornings began with coffee on the porch and evenings ended with quiet conversations about nothing in particular. Emma worked as a librarian at the local library, a place she loved for its calm atmosphere and endless rows of books. She spent her days helping children find stories that sparked their imaginations or guiding adults to novels that offered an escape from their routines. Daniel, on the other hand, was a mechanic. He spent his hours fixing cars at the garage downtown, his hands often covered in grease but always steady. Together they were content, leading lives that were simple yet fulfilling. But one evening, everything changed. It started like any other night. Emma and Daniel sat together on their porch sipping tea and gazing up at the sky. The stars twinkled brightly, scattered across the vast expanse of darkness. It was a peaceful moment, one they had shared countless times before. But then, something unusual caught their attention. A group of lights appeared in the distance, moving erratically across the sky. At first they thought it might be planes or satellites, but the way the lights darted and shifted didn't match anything they had seen before. "Do you see that?" Emma asked, pointing toward the strange lights. Her voice carried a mix of curiosity and unease. Daniel squinted, trying to make sense of what he was seeing. "Yeah, I see it. What do you think it is?" Before either of them could guess, a loud boom echoed through the air, shaking the ground beneath their feet. The sound was deep and thunderous, unlike anything they had ever heard. It seemed to come from the direction of the woods just beyond their property. Without hesitation, they grabbed flashlights and headed toward the source of the noise. The forest was dark and quiet, the only sounds coming from the rustling leaves and distant hoots of owls. As they walked deeper into the trees, the air grew colder, sending shivers down their spines. Their flashlights cut through the shadows, revealing twisted roots and gnarled trunks. Finally, they reached a clearing, and what they saw there stopped them in their tracks. In the center of the clearing lay an object unlike anything they could have imagined. It looked like a spacecraft, though it wasn't sleek or metallic like the ones in movies. Instead, its surface was smooth and fleshy, pulsating faintly as if it were alive. The color shifted between shades of gray and blue, giving it an almost hypnotic quality. Strange symbols glowed softly along its edges, casting eerie patterns on the ground. "What is that?" Emma whispered, her voice trembling. She took a step closer, drawn by a mix of fear and fascination. "I don't know," Daniel replied, his tone equally uncertain. "But we need to be careful." As they approached cautiously, the craft emitted a low hum, vibrating through the ground and into their bones. Then, without warning, thin tendrils shot out from the wreckage, wrapping around their arms and legs. The touch was gentle but firm, holding them in place. Panic surged through both of them, but before they could scream or struggle, a wave of dizziness washed over them and everything went black. When Emma opened her eyes, she found herself lying on her bed, still dressed in the clothes she had worn that night. For a moment she wondered if it had all been a dream, but when she turned to look at Daniel beside her, she knew it hadn't been. His face was pale, and his expression mirrored her own confusion. "What happened?" she asked, sitting up quickly. Her head spun and she pressed a hand to her temple to steady herself. "I don't know," Daniel said, rubbing his temples. "I remember the ship, those things grabbing us, and then nothing." They tried to piece together what had occurred, but the details felt hazy, slipping away like sand through their fingers, yet something lingered. A faint impression of voices whispering in their minds, speaking words they couldn't understand, but somehow felt familiar. Over the next few days, the whispers returned, not just as echoes of memory, but as vivid dreams. In these dreams, Emma and Daniel found themselves surrounded by alien beings. These creatures were tall and translucent, their forms shimmering like water under sunlight. Their eyes glowed with an inner light, and their movements were graceful, yet deliberate. Around them, smaller versions of the same beings gathered, listening intently as one of the elders told a story. The stories were about Earth, but not in the way Emma and Daniel had ever thought of it. One tale described humanity's rise to power through endless wars, painting humans as ruthless conquerors who destroyed everything in their path. Another focused on environmental devastation, showing forests reduced to barren wastelands and oceans choked with plastic. Each story ended with a warning: humans were dangerous, unpredictable, and capable of spreading chaos across the galaxy. At first, Emma dismissed the dreams as products of stress or imagination. But when Daniel admitted he'd been having the same visions, they realized something extraordinary was happening. Whatever had touched them in the woods hadn't let them go. It had left a mark, embedding itself in their minds and forcing them to confront unsettling truths about their species. Determined to uncover answers, Emma suggested they seek help from someone who might understand what they were experiencing. She remembered hearing about Dr. Laura Hayes, an astrophysicist who taught at the nearby university. Though hesitant, Daniel agreed, and together they set out to find her. Dr. Hayes listened carefully to their story, her expression growing more serious with each detail. When they finished, she nodded slowly, her mind racing with possibilities. "This isn't just some random event," she said finally. "If what you're saying is true, it could change everything we know about our place in the universe." With her guidance, they returned to the crash site, hoping to find clues that would explain what had happened. But when they arrived, the ship was gone, leaving behind only scorched earth and strange symbols carved into the trees. Using advanced equipment, Dr. Hayes detected faint electromagnetic signals emanating from the area. She managed to translate fragments of the signal, which revealed coordinates pointing to a remote location deep in the desert. Standing there among the charred remains, Emma felt a chill run down her spine. Whatever force had brought them here wasn't done with them yet, and as much as she wanted to turn back and pretend none of it had happened, she knew they couldn't ignore the call of the unknown. The dreams became harder to ignore. Each night, Emma and Daniel found themselves drawn into vivid visions of alien worlds. They stood among towering crystalline structures that shimmered like rainbows under twin suns. The air smelled faintly metallic, and the ground beneath their feet felt soft, almost alive. Around them, the translucent beings gathered, their glowing eyes fixed on an elder who spoke in a language without words. Instead, thoughts and images flooded Emma and Daniel's minds, painting pictures of humanity's past, present, and potential future. One story showed ancient civilizations rising from the ashes of destruction, only to fall again due to greed and violence. Another depicted cities sprawling across once pristine landscapes, choking rivers and forests with waste. In every tale, humans were portrayed not as creators or explorers, but as reckless forces spreading chaos wherever they went. The final warning was always the same: if left unchecked, humanity would become a nightmare for the galaxy. Emma woke up one morning drenched in sweat, her heart pounding. She turned to Daniel, who lay beside her with his eyes wide open. "You had the dream too, didn't you?" she asked softly. He nodded, sitting up and running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, it's getting worse. These aren't just random stories. They're messages. Someone is trying to tell us something." They decided it was time to share what they were experiencing with Dr. Laura Hayes. When they met her at the university, she listened intently, taking notes as they described the dreams in detail. Her expression grew more serious with each word. "This isn't coincidence," she said finally. "These visions are deliberate communication. Whatever touched you in the woods isn't done yet. It wants you to understand its perspective." Dr. Hayes suggested they follow the coordinates she had decoded from the signals near the crash site. Though hesitant, Emma and Daniel agreed. If there was even a chance of finding answers, they had to take it. Together, the three of them packed supplies and set out on a road trip toward the desert. As they drove, the landscape shifted dramatically. Rolling hills gave way to flat, barren stretches of sand stretching endlessly in every direction. The sky above was cloudless, the sun beating down mercilessly. Despite the harsh conditions, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched. Every so often she glanced out the window, half expecting to see something moving just beyond the horizon. Their journey wasn't entirely lonely. Along the way, they encountered others who claimed to have had similar experiences. At a gas station in a small town, they met Ryan Fletcher, a former soldier with haunted eyes. He told them about an encounter during his deployment overseas. A mysterious object descending from the sky and emitting strange lights that left him disoriented for days afterward. Though he tried to report it, no one believed him, and he eventually left the military, struggling to make sense of what he had seen. Later, at a diner tucked away off the highway, they crossed paths with Mia Collins, a journalist whose career unraveled after she wrote articles about unexplained phenomena. People mocked her work, dismissing her claims as conspiracy theories. But when she heard Emma and Daniel's story, her face lit up with recognition. "I've been looking for people like you," she said. "Something big is happening, and we need to figure it out before it's too late." With Ryan and Mia joining them, the group continued their journey. Conversations flowed easily despite the tension hanging over them. Each person shared fragments of their own encounters, piecing together a larger puzzle. By the time they reached the coordinates, they felt less like strangers and more like allies bound by a shared purpose. The location marked by the coordinates was a vast expanse of desert, devoid of any landmarks or signs of life. The ground was cracked and dry, the air thick with heat. As they stepped out of the car, a sudden tremor shook the earth beneath their feet. Sand swirled around them, stinging their skin as a massive structure began to rise from below the surface. It looked like the ship they had seen in the woods, but far larger and more imposing. Its surface pulsed with light, casting eerie shadows across the landscape. A doorway opened silently, revealing a dark interior illuminated by faint, shifting colors. For a moment, everyone froze, unsure whether to proceed. "We came this far," Emma said, finally breaking the silence. "We can't turn back now." Taking a deep breath, she stepped forward, followed closely by Daniel, Dr. Hayes, Ryan, and Mia. Inside, the air was cool and still, a stark contrast to the scorching heat outside. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting rhythmically, as if alive. Strange symbols glowed along the corridors, guiding them deeper into the structure. At the end of the hallway, they entered a large chamber filled with the alien beings. Their forms towered over the humans, radiating an aura of calm authority. One of the elders approached, its movements fluid and deliberate. Without speaking aloud, it communicated directly into their minds, bypassing language entirely. "You have been chosen," the voice echoed in their thoughts. "Your species stands at a crossroads. You possess the capacity for great creation, but also for destruction. Your actions have alarmed us. We cannot allow chaos to spread unchecked." Emma felt a surge of anger mixed with fear. "Who are you to decide our fate?" she demanded, surprising even herself with her boldness. "Humans aren't perfect, but we deserve a chance to prove ourselves." The being paused, considering her words. "We do not wish to harm you," it replied. "But neither can we stand idly by while your kind consumes resources, poisons worlds, and wages endless wars. You must change, or face intervention." Daniel stepped forward, his voice steady. "If you intervene, it won't solve anything. Humans won't learn unless they choose to. Give us a chance to fix our mistakes. If we fail, then do what you must." The aliens exchanged silent glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the elder nodded. "Very well. We will grant you a trial period. Prove to us that your species can evolve peacefully. But know this: failure will result in immediate action." As the group left the chamber, relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. They knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Humanity's flaws ran deep, and convincing billions of people to change their ways seemed nearly impossible. Yet as they climbed back into the car and headed home, a spark of hope remained. For the first time, they felt connected not just to each other but to something greater, an opportunity to shape the destiny of their species. And somewhere among the stars, The aliens watched, waiting to see if their bedtime stories about humanity would end differently this time. The weight of the aliens' warning settled heavily on Emma, Daniel, Dr. Hayes, Ryan, and Mia as they drove back from the desert. None of them spoke much during the long journey home. The enormity of what had happened and what was expected of them was almost too much to process. They were ordinary people thrust into an extraordinary situation, tasked with convincing a divided and chaotic world to change its ways. It felt like trying to stop a runaway train with bare hands. When they finally returned to their small town in Ohio, Emma suggested they start by reaching out to others who might believe their story. "We can't do this alone," she said firmly. "If we're going to make a difference, we need help. People who understand how serious this is." Daniel agreed, but added, "Not everyone will listen. Some will think we're crazy. Others won't care. But if we find even a few people willing to try, it could be enough to get things moving." With that in mind, they began spreading the word cautiously. Dr. Hayes used her connections at the university to organize private meetings with colleagues in fields like environmental science, sociology, and political theory. She framed their findings as a theoretical exercise, a thought experiment about humanity's future, but hinted at deeper truths for those who seemed open-minded. To their surprise, several academics expressed interest, intrigued by the idea of addressing global issues from a new perspective. Ryan reached out to former military contacts, sharing his experience without revealing too much. He focused on the potential threat posed by extraterrestrial intervention, framing it as a national security issue. A handful of veterans joined their cause, motivated less by fear of aliens and more by a desire to protect humanity's autonomy. Mia, meanwhile, turned to journalism. She wrote articles about unexplained phenomena and growing concerns over climate change, resource depletion, and social inequality. Though her pieces didn't explicitly mention aliens, they highlighted problems that resonated with readers. Slowly, she built a following of individuals eager to discuss solutions rather than dwell on blame. As the group expanded, tensions arose. Not everyone agreed on the best approach. Some members believed drastic measures were necessary, imposing strict regulations on industries, dismantling corrupt systems, or even forcing nations to cooperate through ultimatums. Others argued for gentler methods focusing on education, grassroots movements, and inspiring voluntary change. Emma found herself caught in the middle. On one side was Daniel, who leaned toward stricter actions. "We don't have time for baby steps," he insisted during one heated discussion. "The aliens made it clear if we fail, they'll step in. That means millions, or billions, could suffer. We need to act fast." On the other side was Mia, who countered, "Forcing people won't work. It'll create resistance, maybe even rebellion. If we want real change, we have to show them why it matters. Inspire hope, not fear." Dr. Hayes tried to mediate, reminding everyone of the bigger picture. "Both sides have valid points," she said, "but arguing won't solve anything. We need a plan that combines urgency with compassion, something sustainable." Eventually, they settled on a compromise. They would focus on 3 key areas: reducing environmental harm, promoting equality, and fostering international cooperation. Each subgroup took responsibility for advancing initiatives in their assigned area, pooling resources and expertise to maximize impact. Progress came slowly but steadily. Renewable energy projects gained momentum, fueled by grants and public support. Factories adopted cleaner technologies, and cities implemented programs to reduce waste. In schools, curriculums shifted to emphasize empathy, critical thinking, and global citizenship. Politicians, wary of alien intervention, began collaborating on policies aimed at peace and stability. Despite these successes, challenges remained. Powerful corporations resisted changes that threatened profits. Conspiracy theories spread online, accusing the group of lying or exaggerating the alien threat. Protests erupted in some regions, fueled by distrust of authority and fear of losing freedoms. Through it all, Emma and her team pressed on, determined to prove humanity capable of reform. One evening, after another long day of meetings and negotiations, Emma sat on the porch with Daniel. The stars twinkled above, a reminder of both the beauty and fragility of their world. "Do you think we're doing enough?" she asked quietly. Daniel sighed, leaning back in his chair. "I don't know. Sometimes it feels like we're running uphill against a landslide, but we're doing something. And maybe that's all we can ask for right now." Emma nodded, gazing at the horizon. "It's strange, isn't it? For so long we've looked up at the stars and wondered if we're alone. Now we know we're not. And instead of feeling small, I feel responsible, like we owe it to ourselves and to them to get this right." Daniel smiled faintly. "You always did have a way with words." Before either could say more, a sudden flash lit up the sky. It wasn't lightning, it was brighter, closer, and accompanied by a low hum that vibrated through the ground. Emma and Daniel exchanged startled glances before rushing outside to investigate. Overhead, a massive object descended silently, its surface shimmering like liquid silver. It hovered just above the treetops, casting an otherworldly glow across the landscape. Without hesitation, Emma grabbed her phone and called the rest of the group. Within minutes, Dr. Hayes, Ryan, and Mia arrived, their faces pale but resolute. "They're here," Mia whispered, staring up at the ship. "They're checking on us." No one moved as a beam of light shot down from the craft enveloping the group. When the light faded, they found themselves standing inside the alien structure once again. The chamber was unchanged, its walls pulsing softly as the towering beings observed them silently. "You have made efforts," the elder said, its voice echoing in their minds. "Some progress has been achieved, yet much remains undone. Your species continues to resist change, clinging to habits that endanger your future and ours." Emma stepped forward, her heart pounding, but her voice steady. "Change takes time. Humans aren't perfect, but we're trying. Give us more time, please." The being studied her for a moment before responding. "Time is a luxury we cannot afford indefinitely. However, we acknowledge your sincerity. You may continue for now, but know this: our patience has limits." As quickly as they had arrived, the group was transported back to Earth, left standing in the cool night air. Relief washed over them, but it was fleeting. The alien's message was clear. Humanity's trial period wasn't over, but failure was no longer an option. In the days that followed, the group redoubled their efforts. They worked tirelessly, pushing boundaries and challenging norms. Hope flickered like a fragile flame, sustained by determination and belief in a better future. Somewhere among the stars, the aliens watched, waiting to see if their gamble on humanity would pay off, or if the nightmare they feared would come true. The months that followed were a blur of activity. Emma, Daniel, Dr. Hayes, Ryan, and Mia worked tirelessly, traveling across the country to meet with leaders, activists, and innovators who shared their vision. Their message was simple yet powerful. Humanity stood at a crossroads, and the choices made now would determine its fate. Though they didn't reveal the full truth about the aliens to everyone, they framed their efforts as a fight for survival, a battle against forces that threatened not just Earth, but the future of all life. Their campaign gained momentum. Cities began implementing ambitious green initiatives, replacing fossil fuels with renewable energy sources. Farmers adopted sustainable practices, reducing waste and reviving depleted soils. Schools introduced programs focused on empathy and cooperation, teaching children the importance of working together to solve problems. Even corporations, once resistant to change, started investing in eco-friendly technologies, driven by both public pressure and the promise of long-term profits. But progress wasn't universal. In some regions, resistance grew fiercer. Politicians accused the group of overstepping boundaries, claiming their ideas undermined national sovereignty. Conspiracy theorists spread rumors that the entire movement was a hoax designed to control populations. Protests erupted in major cities, with crowds chanting slogans like "freedom over fear" and "no alien dictators." Emma struggled to stay optimistic. Every setback felt like a step backward, every argument a reminder of how deeply divided humanity truly was. One night, after a particularly grueling day of meetings, she sat alone in her living room, staring at old photographs of her family. Her hands trembled as she held a picture of her parents smiling brightly on their wedding day. She wondered what they would think of everything happening now, if they would be proud or disappointed. Daniel found her there, slumped on the couch with tears streaming down her face. He sat beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "It's okay to feel overwhelmed," he said softly. "You're carrying so much weight on your own." "I'm scared," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if we're not enough? What if no matter how hard we try, it's never going to be enough?" Daniel hesitated before responding. "We can't give up, not now. If we do, then what's the point of any of this? We've come too far to quit." His words didn't erase her fears, but they gave her strength. The next morning, she joined the others at a community center, where volunteers were preparing for a global summit aimed at uniting nations under a common goal: sustainability. It was risky. Some countries refused to participate, but Emma believed it was worth the effort. If they could bring even a fraction of the world together, it might inspire others to follow. The summit took place in New York City, drawing representatives from nearly 50 nations. The atmosphere was tense, filled with mistrust and competing interests. Some delegates argued that wealthier countries should bear the brunt of responsibility, while others insisted poorer nations needed support to make meaningful changes. Tempers flared, and negotiations stalled repeatedly. Dr. Hayes stepped in during one heated session, addressing the room with calm authority. "This isn't about blame," she said firmly. "It's about survival. If we fail to work together, none of us will survive, not rich, not poor, not anyone. This is bigger than borders, bigger than politics. It's about our shared future." Her speech struck a chord. Slowly, agreements began to form. Wealthier nations pledged financial aid to developing countries, while smaller nations committed to adopting cleaner technologies. By the end of the summit, a tentative framework for global cooperation had been established. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start. Back home, the group celebrated cautiously. They knew the real challenge lay ahead, turning promises into action. But for the first time in months, they allowed themselves a moment of hope. Maybe, just maybe, humanity could rise to the occasion. That hope was short-lived. A few weeks later, news broke of a massive oil spill off the coast of Alaska. Millions of gallons of crude poured into pristine waters, devastating wildlife and local communities. Investigations revealed negligence on the part of the company responsible, which had ignored safety protocols to cut costs. Public outrage erupted, overshadowing recent achievements and reigniting debates about corporate greed versus environmental protection. Emma watched the coverage with a sinking heart. She wanted to scream, to demand accountability, but she knew anger wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she called an emergency meeting with the team. "We need to turn this disaster into a lesson," she said. "Show people why shortcuts lead to ruin. Use it to push harder for stricter regulations." Mia agreed. "I'll write about it, expose the truth. Make sure everyone knows what happened and why it can't happen again." Ryan added, "And I'll reach out to my contacts in the military. Maybe they can help enforce compliance in areas where governments are weak." As they worked, reports of strange phenomena began surfacing worldwide. Lights appeared in the skies over major cities, hovering silently before vanishing without a trace. Crops in rural areas glowed faintly at night, emitting a soft hum when touched. Scientists scrambled to explain these events, but deep down, Emma and her team knew the truth. The aliens were watching, testing humanity's resolve. One evening, as Emma walked through a park near her house, she felt a sudden chill, despite the warm air. She looked up and saw a figure standing beneath a tree, its form shimmering like heat waves on asphalt. At first, she thought it was her imagination, but then the figure moved closer, revealing itself as one of the alien beings. "You doubt yourselves," it said, its voice echoing in her mind. "But doubt is not weakness. It is a sign of growth. Your species is learning, however slowly. Emma swallowed hard, forcing herself to remain calm. Are you here to check on us? She asked. In part, the being replied. But also to remind you, time is fleeting. The balance between hope and despair grows fragile. Choose wisely. Before she could respond, the being vanished, leaving her alone in the darkness. Her heart raced as she hurried home, eager to share the encounter with the others. When she told them, they listened quietly, their expressions grim. They're running out of patience, Daniel said finally. If we don't show significant progress soon, they'll intervene. And if they do, it won't matter how far. We've come, Dr. Hayes added. Everything we've worked for will be undone. Determined to avoid that outcome, the group doubled their efforts. They launched campaigns to hold corporations accountable, organized protests demanding stronger environmental laws, and partnered with scientists to develop innovative solutions to pressing issues. Every small victory fueled their determination, but the looming threat of alien intervention weighed heavily on their minds. One night, as Emma gazed at the stars, she whispered a silent plea. Please, give us more time, we're trying. I know it's not perfect, but we're trying. Somewhere among the constellations, the aliens observed silently, waiting to see whether humanity's fragile flame of hope would grow brighter, or flicker out entirely. Years passed, and the world began to change in ways no one could have imagined. The efforts of Emma, Daniel, Dr. Hayes, Ryan, Mia, and their growing network of allies had sparked a global movement. Cities transformed into green havens, powered by renewable energy and designed to coexist with nature. Forests once thought lost were replanted, and rivers once choked with waste flowed clean again. People worked together, sharing resources and knowledge to build communities that prioritized sustainability over profit. But progress wasn't uniform. In some places, old habits died hard. Corporations fought back, lobbying for loopholes in environmental laws. Governments clashed over how to allocate funds for climate initiatives. And while many embraced the changes, others resisted, clinging to outdated ways of life. The divide between those who believed in the movement and those who opposed it grew wider, creating tension that threatened to undo everything they had achieved. Emma and her team knew the aliens were still watching. Strange occurrences continued to happen. Lights in the sky, unexplained phenomena in remote areas. But the beings themselves remained silent. It was as if they were waiting, giving humanity one last chance to prove itself. Every day felt like walking a tightrope, balancing hope and fear, progress and resistance. One evening, Emma stood on the porch of her home, staring at the horizon. The sun dipped below the trees, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. She felt a mix of pride and unease. So much had been accomplished, yet so much still needed to be done. Behind her, Daniel stepped outside, carrying 2 cups of tea. He handed one to her and leaned against the railing. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. "The aliens," she replied after a moment. "I keep wondering what they see when they look at us. Do they see improvement, or do they think we're still the same reckless species they warned us about?" Daniel sighed, his gaze fixed on the distance. "Maybe they see both. We've made mistakes, sure, but we've also tried to fix them. That has to count for something." Before either could say more, a low hum filled the air. They turned toward the sound, watching as a familiar object descended from the sky. Its surface shimmered like liquid silver, casting an ethereal glow across the yard. Without hesitation, they grabbed their phones and called the others. Within minutes, Dr. Hayes, Ryan, and Mia arrived, their faces tense but determined. The group approached the ship cautiously, unsure of what to expect. A beam of light enveloped them, and just like before, they found themselves inside the alien structure. The chamber was unchanged, its walls pulsing softly as the towering beings observed them silently. One of the elders stepped forward, its glowing eyes fixed on Emma. "You have changed," it said, its voice resonating in their minds. "Your world is cleaner, your actions less destructive, yet uncertainty remains. Will these changes endure, Or will they fade when convenience calls? Emma took a deep breath, her heart pounding. We can't promise perfection, she said firmly. Humans make mistakes, it's part of who we are. But we're learning. We're trying to do better, not just for ourselves, but for the future and the... Being studied her for a long moment before responding. Effort alone is insufficient. Intent must align with action. Your species teeters on the edge of possibility. Continue down this path, and you may earn our trust. Fall back into old patterns, and intervention will become inevitable. With that, the group was transported back to Earth, left standing in the cool night air. Relief washed over them, but it was short-lived. The aliens' message was clear. Humanity's trial period wasn't over, but failure was no longer an option. The weeks that followed, the team redoubled their efforts. They traveled to regions where progress lagged, working with local leaders to implement sustainable practices. They partnered with schools to educate children about the importance of protecting the planet, and they used media platforms to share stories of success, inspiring others to join the cause. Public opinion shifted slowly but steadily. More people began to see the value in living harmoniously with nature rather than exploiting it. Even skeptics started to come around, realizing that the changes weren't just about saving the environment, they were about improving lives. But challenges persisted. In some parts of the world, conflicts erupted over dwindling resources. Economies struggled to adapt to new industries, leaving workers unemployed and communities fractured. Conspiracy theories spread online, accusing the movement of being controlled by shadowy forces, or worse, aliens manipulating humanity from behind the scenes. Despite these obstacles, Emma refused to give up. She reminded herself why they had started this journey in the first place. Not because they wanted power or recognition, but because they believed in a better future. Every small victory fueled her determination, and every setback strengthened her resolve. One night, as she sat on the porch gazing at the stars, she felt a strange sense of peace. The road ahead was uncertain, but they had come so far. Humanity wasn't perfect, and it never would be. But maybe perfection wasn't the goal. Maybe the goal was simply to try, to strive for something greater than themselves. Somewhere among the constellations the aliens watched, their thoughts unknowable. Had humanity proven itself worthy of trust? Or was it still too dangerous to let thrive unchecked? Only time would tell. For now, Emma chose to focus on the present. The whispers in her mind had grown quieter, replaced by a steady rhythm of hope. Whatever happened next, she knew they had given their all. And sometimes, that was enough. As the stars twinkled above, Emma smiled faintly. The nightmare the aliens feared might still exist within humanity, but so did the potential for dreams. And in that balance, she found reason to believe.